This is the Franchise QB Podcast, where we empower entrepreneurs to win big in franchising. We huddle up weekly to educate our audience about the most successful small business model ever created, franchising.
Welcome to the Franchise QB Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Halpern, a 20-year industry veteran and entrepreneur. My mission is for listeners to achieve their American dreams of creating wealth and independence through franchise ownership. Every week, we speak with franchisees, franchisors, or vendors that support the industry. Thank you for joining us, and let's get started. Joining us in the huddle today is Dan Clapp, CEO and co-founder of Voda Cleaning and Restoration. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me.
And it is great to have you back on the show. You were a guest about 3 years ago when you launched Voda's franchising. I remember when I met you and the team, there in Maryland when you guys just had your very first discovery day. So it's really cool to see the full circle moment and how far you guys have come. So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. So before we learn about Voda's accomplishments over the past couple of years, tell the audience a little bit about your background in the industry and how you discovered Voda in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember the first time we got together was at a discovery day, or the night before the discovery day in Maryland area where our flagship is. And my cousin actually lives there. And I think you met him. He was at dinner.
I remember that. It was awesome.
I've always liked mixing, my work and life. It's all kind of just one big thing, but got into franchising in 2014. Started as a business broker and franchise consultant. 2016, I started a lead generation company in the franchise space. Wish I could tell you I had this grand foresight that someday I would be a franchisor, but I wasn't thinking that. I was just building my lead generation company. But I spent a lot of years going to franchise conferences where franchisors learn how to be a better, franchise system.
Okay. And
I learned everything you could learn sitting in the classes. And the reason I was in the classes, again, wasn't because I thought someday I'm going to be a franchisor. It was mostly because my customer was franchisors, and I found sitting in the classes helped me, generate business. Yeah. And I always tell people, I think the goal of a business owner should be, 80% revenue production. So by accident, I learned a ton about franchising. That company ended up getting acquired in 2022. And so I took that capital to go to start Voda, which we're doing today.
Yeah. And then, along the way, when you relocated your headquarters from the founding location in kind of Northern Virginia, DC, Maryland area, and you moved up to Madison, Wisconsin, you were kind enough to invite myself and a bunch of consultants up to kind of tour the facility and meet the leadership. And it was a really memorable experience. So I appreciate you having us, there in Madison. Never been before, really liked the town. And in fact, I tried to convince my kids to go to University of Wisconsin, but they said it was too cold. So Dan, tell us, what's one of the biggest lessons or one of the thought processes you've had after leaving the emerging franchise stage and entering maturity? Because when I met you, you had 0 franchisees. Now you have a lot. So you've kind of are leaving emerging and you're getting into that mid-market maturing stage. So, what have you learned along the way so far?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, and for the listeners, we do cleaning and restoration. If a home or a business has a water, flood, pipe breaks, whatever it has to do with a water event, we come and we dry the home and we do floor cleaning like Stanley Steamer and ServicePro mesh together is a good way to explain our business. But as of today, we're about 111 franchise partners, 33 states, and almost 300 territories.
I'm going to give you a little clap here. I mean, that is a huge, huge accomplishment in a short amount of time. And I know that those are intentional partnerships, not just somebody that can fog a mirror, because I've been there, I've attended the discovery day. So congratulations on the early success.
Yeah, thank you. And, over the years, we've gotten better and better at really, I always say we talk people out of Voda as much as into it because we want to align on the people coming into this. It's not an easy business. It's rewarding, but it's hard. But what I would say is it starts with yourself. So in leading our organization, I had to slow down, to speed up. And what's interesting is the way that I've done that on the personal side has been, I actually removed a lot of the unnatural things that make us move quicker. Which, not to get too deep, but I believe usually moving fast in a negative way. I don't mean moving fast as in, executing, but when someone is moving too quickly, I do speak fast because I'm from New Jersey, but I move slow. is just eliminating cheap dopamine. So I've slowly really built myself into someone that can think much longer term, and really just moving at a slower pace. So from a leadership perspective, it starts with myself, and you have to, as a founder, move from startup CEO energy to maturing business
Mhm.
energy, which doesn't mean I can't tap into that here and there. But the biggest thing has been understanding that now when we make a move, it's just not my leadership team and I making a decision. It's has a ripple effect across states and owners and, their own financials. And so I think the biggest one is just slowing down has been key.
Yeah, and if I can jump in, Dan, when I met you, I mean, you are very capable doing a lot of things. And I know you like to wear a lot of hats and you take pride in doing many things on your own. But what I've seen you try to teach myself and other consultants is like focus on the things that you're really good at and focus on the things that are really important to the business. And then find people or automation to kind of take care of those things that are time consuming but don't really produce a lot of results. And I think you're really good at that. And I think that makes it's really important in leadership is to know like when to replace yourself and move on to the next thing because the business evolves and your time is spent better in certain places, much differently than it was when you had no franchisees. So to that end, like when it comes to key performance indicators, KPIs, like what do you track the most now, like when it comes to KPIs in Voda?
Well, first thing I think also as you scale and build a leadership team, we often between myself and the leaders in the company, especially my business partner Zach Nolte, who's our CEO who runs the company, we just recently went through a new level of scale where I was like, hey, here's the areas that like I think still that I'd like to be involved, and everything else I trust you on, and we put it in a document so there's total clarity. And same for him. I was like, are there areas where I'm getting in your way, and not adding value, and where am I adding value that I should do more of it, whether it's, with you or with someone else on the team. But now with KPIs, very, very straightforward answer. We always were good at tracking our franchise owners' numbers. We were not as good as tracking their unit economics, like the actual profit. How much money did you take home, to your family or keep in your business? But that's, after all costs, what was your actual net profit? And so this year, after we brought in our CFO, we really put a laser focus on that. I tell people all the time, we'd love to be bigger than ServicePro one day, but what I'd rather say is we have the better unit economics. If you buy a Voda, eventually your numbers from a owner, benefit is stronger than, our competitors. And if we do that, the rest will happen. We'll become the biggest, but it's become a laser focus on just pure profitability, less so top line.
Yeah, I mean, if when you're all about the franchisee's performance and their bottom line, and that's intentional and it's done from the beginning, because a lot of these bigger companies then have to try to reverse engineer it and recreate the culture of, okay, now we care about our owners' profitability. But if that's kind of built from the beginning, then everyone buys in and it's really helpful. You have that good collaboration and other owners are telling, new owners and mid-tier owners like how they're performing and all of that leads to, system success. So we talked about kind of the emerging stage and getting to those 100 units. What do you see Voda looking like? What's the vision for the next, say, 10 years?
I think it's being, what do the greatest athletes all have in common that played amazingly for decades or for, long periods of time? I would say it's
Am I supposed to
consistency.
answer that?
No, it's rhetorical, but it's consistency, right? The greatest players
Show up every day, practice your butt off, and the results will follow.
and they never lost that, right? Like the greatest of all time, they stuck with the routine until they stopped playing. And so for me, I think the greatest achievement would be to just be able to keep doing what we're doing for the longest period of time, which for us is we've grown very consistently. What I'd love to say is that we grow the same kind of clip over 10 years, not any faster, not any slower, but consistently. I think that's how you win in the long run.
Yeah. And I think the way to do that is by knowing who to award and who to allow access into the system. So, how do you figure out who you're not looking for in a franchise candidate?
Yeah. I have a changing thought on this as we speak. What I've come to realize is we know what makes a great franchise owner. It's someone that's going to network, be the mayor of the town. They're going to invest in marketing. They're going to follow the system and they have the capital. I think that's every home service franchise though.
Mhm.
What we have found is our job to do is to communicate as much as possible the realities of owning this business. And then the people that obviously those four are basics. They have to invest in marketing, be a good networker, follow the system and have money. But what we found is the people that are aware of all the negatives who still want to move forward are our best franchise owners, meaning they went into this with wide-eyed, eyes open, knowing exactly what we look for. And so, I saw the Jimmy John founder talk about this on a podcast. They, obviously massive, sandwich shop. And he said the exact same thing. The second he started telling people, this is going to suck, Mike. Your sub meet isn't going to show up. Your GM's going to quit. It's going to be the hardest thing you and your wife ever do. But here's what's going to happen at the end of the tunnel. He started getting the best franchise owners. And so we just really try to tell people, the realities of our business, and then, find people that are, willing to tough it out for a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, having that alignment from the get-go as to how hard it's going to be an owner. It doesn't matter what brand you're in. Everything's hard, right? And it comes down to, the franchisor is not going to make the franchisee successful. The franchise owner is responsible for their success. Now, they have to have the fundamentals and the framework and the tools and the support and the training and all the other kind of ancillary things. But at the end of the day, it's like you want to get someone that is highly motivated, that is going to show up, they're going to learn, they're going to collaborate with you as the franchisor, with other franchisees, and they're going to strive to be tops in the system and show up every day with that same mentality. It's hard, right? It's really hard work. So you mentioned home services. I know you guys are right in the thick of that, and it's a category in franchising that we've seen explode since the pandemic. Tell us something about franchising specifically in your home services category that no one's talking about.
Franchising is an industry, but I think people often put franchises in these buckets, right? They'll compare, I heard, Crumble Cookie grew X speed or had XYZ issue, or, a brick and mortar franchise grew at a certain speed and then couldn't keep up with, with support. And they're taking brick and mortar, right, which is a completely different industry, and then whatever industry that brick and mortar is in, completely different industry, and then using the blanket of franchise and putting everything together, right? So, to give you an example, like with Voda, totally different business. We don't have leases to sign. We don't have these large development, meaning if you bought a Voda from us, we'd have you open in, 90 days, maybe 120 if you're doing an SBA loan, but pretty quickly. Right. Whereas when you buy, brick and mortar, you've got a 9-month time just before you even sign a lease usually, and then build it out. At minimum, right? At minimum, yeah. And so, a lot of times I think in franchising, people put everything into one bucket. The other thing I would say is, on that same topic, is people make that mistake when looking at franchises. I believe if you want a semi-absentee business, brick and mortar is probably more likely to be than mobile services in the beginning, because you're dealing with a box. Like, you can only move the box so much and change what goes into the box. Whereas in our business, it's a lower investment. There's a higher opportunity. You get to control how much sales you do a lot more, but you also can control the business going the wrong way a little bit more. And so, yeah, it can be semi-absentee. Yeah, it can be, it's a system, but I think there's a lot more freedom in home services, which I guess what I'm trying to say is that's a blessing and a curse. There's a positive and a negative to that.
Yeah. I can see if you have a brick and mortar business, like, I know restaurants are complex, but like a fitness business where you need like someone at the front and you need like a personal trainer, you can be a little bit semi-absent, but in a business like yours where there's so many ways to grow it, right? Like you have this density of population in your territory, and you could do commercial work, you can do residential work, like the sky's the limit. So you can't be complacent. Like you got to go out there and hunt, you got to go out there and build relationships and be the mayor of the town, like you say. I think you coined that phrase. So I know you can answer this question for 20 minutes, but if you were to say, what are the key differentiators that Voda has from its other franchises in the space? How does it stand out? What are your thoughts?
I'll start with the personal side, because I think that matters. So I sold my previous business to private equity. I didn't want to. My partner did. I'm glad we did. In retrospect, we took the capital, and I was ready to do my next thing. And I love what we're doing here. In this business, I control whether we sell or not. And so why I say that is I have zero intention. And I built a team from the beginning of a young or young-minded, none of us are that young anymore, we're getting older, but, young-minded leaders that wanted to be with me in this for the long term. And so our goal is to build this for the long term, not exit to private equity or anything like that. And I always tell people, if I was on someone in the shoe, I wouldn't want to hear never because, things can change. But we really believe that what we're building for the long term is really exciting. And so I think a lot of our franchise owners love the fact that they can be part of a pretty mature system at this point. There's a lot of data, there's a lot of support, but we still have that, kind of startup energy and mentality.
Yeah.
That's the personal touchy-feely side. On the more important, tangible side, three things. One, we help our franchise owners with the lead gen. A lot of the call center and the marketing, we do a lot of it, with them or for them. Two, they get two franchises in one, cleaning and restoration, which works really well together. And then three, the brand really does stand out in the marketplace. If you see our trucks drive by, they're unlike any other. And then four, I'll add one more. When you buy a franchise, you're not buying just brands and systems and leadership team. It really should be about the tribe of other franchise owners that you can talk with. Like, I know you, Mike, in your business, you've got, your friend Greg, and you guys can trade notes and you're in a power group and you have a way to, work together and get to the next level. We offer the same thing in our franchise where, a lot of times the franchise owners, they don't want to hear from, Dan and Zach. They want to hear from a local peer. And we've got a lot of that connectivity in our system more than probably most brands.
Yeah. And I love that you encourage it and it's like implicit in your culture. And I mean, I was an independent consultant for many years, mostly doing like sell side advisory for restaurant chains, but like joining FranServe changed a lot for me in a positive way because of that collaboration. I mean, I have an accountability group, I have a power team, I have people that I've befriended that I collaborate with. My business gets better, I learn more, I see new brands. And that's the same thing in a franchise system. When I talk to candidates, I'm like, what I'm doing with FranServe is the same thing you need to be doing in any business you pick. Like, find who are the best producers in the system, emulate them, help them, but also learn from them. And then also get as much as you can out of corporate. You're paying that royalty, like, get your money's worth for it. But also, like, the real secret is with the other owners that are willing to share. And some of them aren't, right? Like they're people. Some are like kind of closed, but a lot of them aren't. And if you put yourself out there and you kind of get back what you give, so it's kind of a two-way street. And I know you mentioned a lot of items for in fact, and I know there's more, but like the lead gen thing, I mean, you're an expert in it. Every time you address our network with different tips and tricks to connect with new candidates and help them get into ownership, like that's a huge advantage for Voda franchisees because like you go way above and beyond because you've been there, you've done it, you ran a company that connected, candidates with brands and you're doing it now specifically in your discipline. So that's a huge edge, I think. So for anyone listening that's like, hey, Voda sounds really cool. I like the cleaning piece, the restoration piece. I like the culture, like what you guys are doing. What's kind of our guidance with item 7 in startup cost?
Yeah. And I'll tell you, our new FTD comes out in about 5 days, which I'm excited about, which goes even to, more detail. I'm proud of our item 7 because we've really included everything that we can think of in that cost. And so it's between, the low 200s and all the way up to 350. The reason why is if you include through the SBA and home services, something that's changed over the past year or so, I want to say, is a lot of times the SBA Small Business Administration that's giving a loan is requiring the truck to be purchased with the investment. And so that's including the entire truck and equipment package if you do an SBA loan, but it's financed in that, in that 10-year term, which is great. So instead of getting a truck, loan for, shorter period of time, you can get a 10-year through the SBA. But if someone's leasing a truck, then it could be more on that 250, all the way up to that 350 range. And in the range, in that item 7, we go through everything, detailed wise. I do think this business, we'd rather someone a little more well capitalized. So if you're on that bottom echelon, it may not make sense. Although we have had owners get in for the lower side. If you're going to get in on the lower side, you're going to really have to be out there networking and building your business that way. Yeah.
And also, like to your point, if you have a better capitalized franchisee, they could just buy the van or the truck outright and, not have that debt service and, and just get in the game, or they can lease it, right? Like they have that option if they're a cash buyer.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many options and I can't give tax advice, but I'm yet to be convinced why not lease a truck. If you do a capital lease the right way, there's Section 179 bonus depreciation, which is a whole benefit I won't get into. There's so many benefits to buying or leasing the truck, and it really all depends on each individual owner's specific situation. But yeah, it's in that 2 to 350 top range. And And then what I'm really excited about is our item 19. Last year's item 19, we showed our top 50% of franchise owners at 687,000, top 20%, 800,000, and top producers at $1 million. Our corporate store at, 2.7 million in gross sales with the 22% net profit. And that's gone up year over year from 1.7 to 2.4 to 2.7. And so EBITDA has really grown. What I'm super excited about is go look at our new FDD at the time this dropped is out. And we have a lot more enhancements, a lot more data, and those numbers have improved drastically. So just check out the new item 19 for the 2026 FDD.
Yeah, those numbers from the current FDD are really impressive. So can't wait to see what's happened in the past year. But hey, Dan, this has been awesome. It's always great talking to you. Is there anything else you want to add to the mix before we wrap up today?
If you're listening to this, my advice is take one step. Talk to someone like Mike. He's got, the ability to connect you to opportunities. Doesn't mean you have to do anything. My advice to anyone, whenever I've started something that was like a giant journey, it's just one step, as the cliche goes. And so my advice is just do a consultation, do research. You never know what's out there.
Get off the sidelines, get in the game. Great advice. If anyone listening would like to connect with Dan and his team to learn about becoming a franchise owner with VOTA, contact me at franchiseqb.com. I'll get you connected. Dan, thank you so much for taking the time to get in the huddle with us again today.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. Thank you for listening to the Franchise QB podcast, where you're at the helm of your future as a franchise owner. If you enjoyed the content, please rate the show and recommend it to anyone that might be interested in franchising. Make sure to visit franchiseqb.com to subscribe to my newsletter and for an actionable playbook to go from walk-on to legend in your new business. Follow us on Twitter at QBFranchiseQB and join us every week for a new episode. See you next time.
Visit franchiseqb.com to take the next step of your journey towards wealth, independence, and franchise ownership. And remember, when working for the man gets old, you must do something bold. Thank you for listening.